And certainly the big news of the day, a Clark County grand jury has indicted Alvin Kamara and 3 others for alleged beating at a Las Vegas nightclub last year. Kamara, also Cincinnati Bengals cornerback Chris Lamons, and 2 other men face criminal charges connected to the incident. We have with us Craig Mordock, defense attorney out in New Orleans. And Craig, we knew eventually this was going to happen, but this is a big deal, and especially for where it happened at in Las Vegas.
I would disagree with you, Mike, on whether we knew this was going to happen. The original incident that led to the arrest occurred February of 2022, so almost a year ago. As you guys are aware, the case had been continued several times throughout the year, and particularly, obviously, during football season. It was continued. The complaining witness in the matter, Mr. Green, filed a civil lawsuit in New Orleans that has been removed to federal court. There's obviously a stay in that pending the resolution of the criminal charges. Alvin has hired probably the 2 best criminal defense lawyers in Las Vegas, David Schoenfeld and his partner, to represent him in this matter. And I would have told you when this happened that it was probably, I would have put it at about a 60 to 75% chance that this would have been wrapped up before now, with Kamara writing a check to the victim and maybe doing some anger management or diversion classes, and it all kind of getting swept under the rug, so to speak. The indictment, the prosecutors do not waste valuable grand jury time on cases where they do not have the cooperation of the victim. So in Nevada, my understanding is you can be charged with a crime in 2 ways. One is bill of information, and the other is an indictment. And in Nevada, my understanding is most felonies are indicted to prevent the defendant from having what's called a preliminary hearing, where they can question usually just the police officer, but it can be more than the police officer, and sort of test holes in the case and theory and all of that. So Alvin will lose his right to a preliminary hearing through all of this, but that was always probably going to happen with the way procedure is in Nevada. And based on the comments from David Schoenfeld today, it sounds like they are preparing to go to trial on this. I will tell you the charge that he was indicted on, the second degree, it's the equivalent of what's called second degree battery in Louisiana, but it's in Nevada, it's assault and battery with a serious bodily injury. It is probatable. He could, if he's found guilty, he could receive probation. But I think that's probably the likely outcome if he does plead guilty to that charge. But I would tell you, the chance of him receiving some jail time is not zero in this case.
You talk about Alvin Kamara's representation and how they're the best of the best. What do you know about Clark County, Nevada District Attorney Steve Wilson? He didn't sound like he was inclined to go lightly on Kamara when he said in a statement after the incident, "There's a point where enough is enough. Be responsible because they have so much to lose, and it's sad." I think the Las Vegas environment contributes to this issue, but at the end of the day, it's the human himself, is the athlete or the entertainer that makes choices, just like you and I would. And then immediately when the police, when Alvin didn't help his cause by telling the police a version of events that conflicted with what the video evidence on the incident showed happened.
Craig, that's why I thought this would come to this. Reading that comment that Bob's had for over a year now,
yes.
It sounded like, man, that district attorney, man, I'm not playing around with this.
I think that definitely plays into it, and I think in his thought process on something like this as well is Las Vegas it now has 2 professional sports teams. It's likely the NBA is going to put a team there, and it looks like the Oakland A's may move there.
That's
so
right.
It is now going to become a mecca for professional athletes, and not just people who come in for a weekend or whatever. There are going to be professional athletes living there. And I do think to a certain extent they want to make an example. When a professional athlete commits a crime, they do want to make an example out of him because it's obviously a high-profile case. They're a tourist city, much like New Orleans, and they don't want to have people coming here and hurting other people in casinos or fighting in casinos. I mean, that's bad for business, obviously. I do think that plays into it. But I would tell you, I think the driver of this is not so much the district attorney as it is the victim and the victim's attorney, Tony Buzz. Those are the two. I think they are fully on board with the prosecution, and they can drop out basically at any.
Then you look at their surveillance video obtained by the police. Kamara was not the first person to throw the punch, but the police report does not say which man threw the first punch. But after the first punch was thrown, Alvin Kamara allegedly joined in and punched the victim several times, according to the report, including after the victim fell and lost consciousness, and he still was getting hit.
Yes, and so what David Schoenfeld, as Kamara's attorney, has alluded to prior to today, and I think even today, is that this was going to be some sort of a self-defense case. But I don't see how Kamara's behavior is consistent with a self-defense.
Yeah, what's on the video, right, Craig?
Yeah, exactly.
Craig, sort of explain
it does not make a ton of sense. I'll tell you that. I think it's going to be a very tough sell to 12 people from Nevada that, hey, this is really a self-defense case.
Yeah. Craig, sort of explain to everybody, why is the civil defense deal in Louisiana, yet the criminal trial would be in Las Vegas?
Well, that's a good question. The incident itself took place in Las Vegas. So criminal jurisdiction is anywhere where one element of the crime occurred. And in this case, all the elements of the crime occurred in Clark County. Okay, there's nothing. I mean, it wasn't like Kamara said, "Hey, I'm going to fly to He gets on a plane in New Orleans, and while he's on the tarmac, he says, "Hey, I'm going to go beat the living daylights out of a guy in a Nevada casino, Mr. Green in a Nevada casino." That's not how it happened. He didn't formulate his intent in Louisiana. His intent was formulated in the casino during the incident. So all of that would be contained, and venue in this case would be in Clark County. Now, civil venue rules are a lot different, and some of it is wherever you can find the defendant. And I think Tony Busby thought he was going to find a very favorable, I don't know why he thought this, but he was going to find a very favorable jurisdiction for a plaintiff in New Orleans. Okay. And New Orleans civilly is known as a very plaintiff-friendly jurisdiction, New Orleans State Court. But because the two, and this is another factor in this, but because the two parties in this are from different states, and the damages are above $75,000, or at least that's the allegation. Right. It can be removed to federal court, and that's what Kamara's attorneys in the civil case did. And federal court in the Eastern District of Louisiana is not nearly as plaintiff-friendly as New Orleans State Court.
I'm glad you brought that up, because I was just reading on, and this makes sense, because you say, well, that's a conspiracy to commit battery in the state of Nevada is a gross misdemeanor, while battery resulting in substantial bodily harm is a felony. So whenever, I know the common man, when they hear the word felony, misdemeanor, felony, I think we all know the difference between that.
Yeah.
Yes. And again, even if it's a felony charge for Kamara, it should be probatable. I know it's 1 to 5 years that he's looking at in jail, but I believe that can be suspended. So but I do think it does increase the likelihood of Alvin doing some jail time here. And obviously for a running back who's in his mid-20s, if he misses any part of a season or an entire season, I mean, that's
devastating.
That's huge for him.
Yeah. Yep. Yes.